Hey guys, so welcome back to the Goodfellow Podcast. As I said, I have Ian Pedersen, who has been taunted as the Walter White in the cannabis world. Ian, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the show. Uh,
Thanks, Joe.
we
Great to
No
connect.
problem. Oh man, it's a pleasure having you. Just wanted to uh, ask you some questions for my audience about the life you led, what started you. Uh, so if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit like where you're from, how you got started, and
Yeah, yeah. So, originally born in California, Southern California, San Bernardino area. Parents out there. My dad kind of into the biker scene. So, give you a little context, kind of where I'm coming from as far as the counterculture and kind of where I started my life. I think that's always important. So, yeah, ended up moving to Phoenix when I was just about 1 year old. That's where I started my childhood. Like I said, my dad was into kind of the biker scene, super clean cut dude, but definitely into the biker scene. So I was kind of exposed to the counterculture early, kind of the outside the system lifestyle.
right?
So yeah, growing up in Phoenix, and then we ended up moving to a small town called Cottonwood, Arizona, which is just north of Phoenix. Anyways, about 100 miles north. And you think it was a small, idyllic town where you can't get into much trouble, but on the contrary, I guess there's trouble everywhere. And growing up on one of the largest concentrated borders of drug trafficking here in
Wow.
Arizona, yeah, in Phoenix, Arizona. So just outside of Tucson, we're about 4 hours away from the border. And you've got most of the illegal crossings that have been coming for the last many years. And then, of course, the corridors that they use for the cartels. So that's Sinaloa, all those guys coming out of Michoacan.
Wow. So Ian, let me just ask you, you think it's the biker influence a little bit that kind of led you into this? Because I hung around with a lot of bikers myself. I hung out with some of the Hells Angels, Chigalings and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I can kind of relate, but it still could be different for you.
Yeah, for me, again, that kind of counterculture influence, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Not your normal lifestyle, and just a different style to grow up around. Even though parents were amazing people, parents still together for many years, just a wonderful lifestyle as a child. But yeah, that kind of exposure to a different scene was something that kind of stuck with me. I grew up with stories of my dad, back in Southern California. They fly a plane in, they'd unload it, working with the HA back in the day in San Bernardino, which they used to call Purdue, it's like a hotbed for the HA and those. That's actually where it was founded and created out of, was San Bernardino,
Mm.
California. My dad had a
Wow.
cousin. Yeah, my dad had a cousin who was one of the first pissed off bastards. And he actually came back from the war. If you're familiar with the history of the HA and the Hells Angels and all that, they were formed, I believe, out of two groups. One of them was the pissed off bastards. And it ended up forming that group. So I kind of grew up around that lifestyle, grew up around kind of crazy stuff, exposure, to weed, stuff like that. Not really exposure to
Hmm.
drugs or anything, but yeah, just a way different lifestyle for a kid. So I think that kind of started me down that road, a little bit of curiosity and just being kind of a rebel.
Yeah, that's cool. Like Sonny Barger there and all of
Yeah.
those guys, and you're right. There was two different people in that World War II. That's when it started, the HA back in them days. So you're 100% correct in that, and you always get that kind of influence, and you always get that background when you hang out with them because they're proud of it, which they should be.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
like. What age then you think you started making money? Because obviously you're selling, you want to make money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I didn't really get into it until I was around 16 years old. I mean, I'd smoked and
Okay.
stuff, gotten cannabis. But around that time, again, living here in Arizona, you're not really like back in East, maybe you're picking up grams or quarter ounces or something like that to smoke, back in the day. Here
Hmm.
we get quarter pounds or pounds, just as kids, as personal, because of the amount of weight that comes through. You've got hundreds, if not thousands of pounds that are being laid over in some of these small towns on their way up. Basically we live next to one of the largest corridors where you leave Mexico, you go up about 4 hours, and you have to basically hit two major drug trafficking highways. And one of them is going to be I-10 that takes you out to Florida, and then up towards I-40, which is going to take you up to Detroit, Chicago, New York, all those areas. And those, go ahead.
So you were right in the middle of everything then, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a hotbed for activity, the cartel activity. Back then it was the Mexican Mafia, and controlled some parts by the Mafia out there as well. A lot of
Mm.
illegal kind bud growing operations, clandestine as we'll call them, operations going on here in Arizona. There was a huge warehouse, well, not a warehouse, like what would be like a commercial building facility where you have commercial office space. And there was a huge grow that was caught out here in the 90s, thousands of pounds, hydroponic grow indoor. So it takes all kinds. You got the Mexican Mafia, you got the North Mafia, and then you've got like California, you've got the Emerald Triangle, which is a huge concentration that was just building at the time and as a change of prohibition. So I got into it, was about 16, and just lightly, into cannabis and that. I got my first pound, etc.
Wow.
I could learn some lessons, I guess I could convey some lessons from that age. So the first person I ever got a pound from by the name of Joel Chamberlain, he's passed away now, he's dead.
Okay.
I think I started to learn the price of what somebody was willing to put on a life. So I've learned over the years that somebody could put the price of $20 or $20,000 on your life, whether it's for disrespecting you over $20 or a huge amount of money. I'm sure you've seen that
You'd
as
be
well.
surprised how cheap life is, really.
Yeah, it is really strange, the price, that cheap price of life that people are willing to put on it, But with that being said, you can be killed over $20. I have a friend that was shot over $20 just by disrespecting somebody, and I have another friend, that person I was just telling you about, that hooked me up with my first pound, who was killed over 20,000. And this isn't a small town. You think, things can't happen, but money and drugs, greed. I think you mentioned you used to roll drug dealers, so. I think it's a temptation, certainly, but $10,000, $20,000 to the person that killed that guy, who ended up getting off for it, never was end up charged for it because of small town, hard to prove things. I'm sure that person now realizes that $20,000 was quite a little bit of money to put on somebody's life.
It just goes to show you sometimes the level of respect you have for life itself, or just, if you feel disrespected, it depends on, and also on my life being an associate, respect goes a long way. And I mean, you've probably seen a lot of movies. I don't know if you ever saw with Denzel Washington when he was a gangster in Harlem back in the days. And, some people, they'll shoot you over $1 because it's their money. They don't care. And, so, but no, I get it. But I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, like with Frank. No, with Frank Lucas.
Frank White. That's right.
Frank. Yeah, he. I think it was Frank Lucas with the American Gangster.
Frank Lucas. I'm sorry. Yep.
No, Paul. Yeah. So, that's a big thing. And there's a scene where he just, he needs to prove his, essentially he's proving his ego. You know what I mean, and taking his territory. But with that being said, you really learn what the price is, and so. There's a huge dichotomy, again, like I said, you've got the Mexican Mafia, you've got the Mafia, you've got the guys that are dealing kind bud, so many different types of people you could be dealing with. So, like pre-1990s, so I would say the 1990s is when I was in the scene as a younger, like 16, 17, 18. And that's where you start to get into things. That's where you start pushing weight, moving weight, etc. But at that time, you're dealing with typically commercial. So that what we call commercial now, which is basically the swag weed, comes out of Mexico. That's a whole different game to what you're seeing now. And I guess I'm going to kind of talk about the transition of how we as a society, and myself, as an early dealer, and then would go on to be a cultivator, would kind of, I guess, explain the genesis of this industry.
Yeah. What's the difference and stuff like that? Because a lot of people don't know. And even myself, I don't know myself. So yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, you said you hadn't smoked since you were like 14 or something like that?
I stopped when I was 14. I started when I was 11.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I started a little bit earlier. My brother turned me on to it, but I didn't really get back into it until I was like my late, teenage, 16, 17. So that's when living in a small town, I start going to Phoenix. We lived close to Phoenix. It's a city. And that's when we start going down there for events, underground parties. We used to call them rave parties back in the days, underground parties. And so myself and multiple different friends that I roll with are all dealing in the scene, I'm dealing weed, what I'm saying. And other guys deal other things. So that puts me in a position where, I end up meeting and coming across paths with some interesting characters. So Arizona, you think is so far out from back east, you don't run into anybody out there. But Arizona is crazy. It's a hotbed for exiles, for witness protection. Mob exiles, witness protection. If you fuck up, you get sent out here. Pardon my French. I don't know if you cuss on here, whatever.
No, that's okay.
So this is kind of where they send you, to dry out, so I've met actually quite a few people, from, I guess, your side of the life. So I'm not hugely familiar with that from a personal standpoint, although I've had some run-ins, but certainly informed as far as the history, and I guess I've watched a a lot of documentaries, so familiar with some of the things that have happened. So like your family that you were with, the Bonanno family, had a interesting run, and I'll talk about here in a little while with a few different people connected to some of those families, whether it would be a Bonanno or a Lucchese. But my own personal story, going down to the cities and getting into working with people down there, distributing. We start crossing paths with some interesting people. So I guess a story can jump to, I'm not sure if you've watched the HBO Sons of Ecstasy series that has just come out on HBO, I think last month.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it basically chronicles the Sammy the Bull situation. He was in witness protection out here in Scottsdale, and this is where I actually have a run-in with his son, Gerard. So I didn't know this at the time, but I guess to backtrack. So 30 years ago, I'm in a club with my friends who was an ecstasy dealer, and we ended up essentially running into Gerard and his crew, a very small crew, it was just a couple people. But Gerard at the time was out there with Sammy, was on witness protection program. And after everything he did with John Gotti, I'm not going to, be too familiar, but certainly followed that in the news. And he ended up coming out here and getting involved in ecstasy trafficking with his son. I don't know if you heard about that story.
I definitely did. That's how he got caught and wound up doing another 20 years.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So, so I had an interesting run-in with his son. So I'm at the club one night. A friend of mine's got a bunch of pills, and I didn't know this till later. So this is, again, to backtrack. I told the story about what it would have been in November on the Matt Cox show, and it was just an interesting anecdote from 30 years ago for me. Well, I didn't know I would reach out later on, shortly after the show, to one of the people that was involved in this and the show, The Sons of Ecstasy, with HBO. And he ended up letting me know that they've got the show coming out. Well, lo and behold, through that show, I would find out a little bit more about what happened so many years ago. So we're in the club one night, and essentially my friend's got the pills. He's got a few hundred on him. We're in a 2-story club, and a friend of mine comes up to me and he says, "Hey, this guy's looking for some pills." Well, I'm not the pill dealer at the time. I do my own thing, but we're all crew. We all roll together. So I say, "Hey, RJ, what do you got on you?" He's like, "I got a few hundred." I was like, "Okay, how many does he want?" And the guy's like, "I'll take them all." So my friend walks across the club, comes back, and I tell him, "Don't bring the guy with you. If you're going to talk, we'll talk. You go handle the business, come back." Well, I look up and the dude's standing right there. I wouldn't realize till later on that it was Gerard Gravano. I wouldn't actually realize till recently, because he's grown his mustache and everything back. And I'm sitting there looking at the guy on the special after I talked to Sean Atwood, who was also another key character in that, and was like, "Wow, that was the guy." So I'm standing there, and he says, "Yeah, I would like the pills." And we're like, "Okay, how many do you want?" He said, "All right, I'll go ahead and take 100 or 200. I can't remember what it was." The tricky part was he was paying full freight. He said, "I'll pay $20 a piece," which is retail. So I should have known that was a red flag right there. I'm sure you as rolling drug dealers, you know what I mean? You tell somebody you're going to be, "Yeah, I'll pay you whatever you want for it." Person gets greedy and they get rolled.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you're an
right.
undercover cop. If they're willing to pay over, that's another thing how you can test an undercover cop, is they're going to pay over.
That's right. Good point.
They're not going to pay the rate, So anyways, long story short, the guy is right there, standing there, and he's all of a sudden on us and he wants the pills. Well, this is pre-2001 Ian, risky young teenager. And so I'm like, "All right, let's do this." And he's like, "You got the pills?" And I was like, "Yeah." Boom, grabs my arm, puts his hand on my arm. He says, "I'm an undercover cop. Police are outside. You're coming with me." And I look at him, and he's this big old dude. He's got this big old Fu Manchu going on. He's got the big glasses, and he's got the raver hat on. Back in the day, they used to wear these like soft hats. But this dude is not, he's not the kind of kid that goes to the shows. Like, I can tell, and I can definitely tell he's not a cop. You just know, especially the way he said it. So my friend who was with me, another friend who's standing with me, GP, who was kind of brokering the deal, grabs his arm, puts his hand on his arm and says, "Get your fucking hand off my friend." Just in time, I've got the pills in my hand that are still in an open cellophane, because he just literally like served them up. So they're still, it's not even sealed or anything. And I just said, "What pills?" End up dropping them and slip out. And so I slip out, my friend distracts him, and we're in this huge club. There's hundreds of people. And so my other friend who was dealing up the pills, he's gone. My friend who is there, GP, he's got his arm on the dude, and they're kind of tussling a little bit just so I could get away. I get away, get downstairs, and I see a couple dudes crawling around the club looking for me. So I'm trying my best to keep a low key. I end up seeing a friend that I had known, and I was like, "Dude, I need your hat. I need your hat now." And he's looking at me like, "What the fuck is going on? And I'm just like, dude,
Yeah.
I need your fucking hat right now. It was kind of sad because I was into more of the like, I guess the lighthearted part of the scene. You know, I wasn't one of the straight up dealers at the time, you know, that used to go to the scene and flip pills to people. You know, I was more about it for, you know, for what was going on with the music. And that was kind of like a part of my life for many years. I'd go on to be a music producer, get credits with ASCAP. So long story short, I'm running around the club, get the hat on, and I put it down like this and just start dancing. And the dudes are swarming around me. I mean, I got dudes swarming the club, you know, it was like 2 or 3 dudes. It wasn't like a whole crew, but they're definitely, you know, and I could see them, but I'm trying not to pay attention to them so they don't know it's me. Anyways, looking at the door, and the door's like 30 feet away, you know, and I got to make the door. And I'm just like, fuck, if I get outside, are they going to be there? And boom, make the door, get outside, get out to the car where we're at. My girlfriend's out there. And I'm like, go back in and get the pills. Cause there's, you know, 100 or 200 pills laying on the ground of this club right now. And she goes back in, she's crawling around the floor to get the pills. Long story short, I don't find out till later on, because I end up seeing pictures of Sammy's son, but he's got shaved at the time. So like, if you look at his mugshots and him getting arrested, it was probably pretty smart. He ended up shaving everything. So if anybody was going to testify about the dirt he was doing in clubs, then he would look a little different. And so what was even crazier is I'm watching this show later on, and I realized that was the guy. That was the guy that fucking tried to roll me. And he's also telling a story in the documentary, if you watch the documentary, about how he would walk up to people and he would try to roll them because he was trying to basically, you know, cover the territory. He's trying to, you know, he was trying to get the territory from another dealer. If you watch the show, it's about 2 different dealers, an English bloke who was a really cool guy who had the lock on the scene. And then Gerard and his dad came in and wanted to capitalize on the scene. You know, and again, I don't want to speak to exactly, you know, what Sammy's part was in that, you know, because as the story goes, it was Gerard that was really handling the business. And then Sammy wanted to come in to protect him. But I don't want to speak out of turn for people I don't know.
No, that's okay.
With.
That's fine.
Yeah, but I have spoken with Sean Atwood since then. And he actually told me about 3 months ago about this HBO series that was coming out. So you guys should check it out. It's pretty cool. And it basically
I'm definitely going to watch it now. Yeah, I'm going to watch it because of this interview. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
did you get arrested at any time then after this? I mean, because listen, let's face it, the motivation's always money. But I want to know about the arrest. What happened to you there too? Because that's pretty wild about how Sammy tried to help his own son, because they all took a pinch between him, his daughter, I think, his son. I think they all went down on that.
Yeah, that's a hard one to go down on, as well as the guy Sean Atwood. He went down as well. He got a lengthy sentence that has now been deported to England. But yeah, crazy story. Things you don't think to run into, but you do out here, you know. So ended up running into a couple other connected guys. If you're curious, a Lucchese.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so I ended up running into a guy named Bill. He's a friend of a friend, and he became one of my connects for Kind Bud. Well, again, certain people have certain products. So like at this time, this is basically what I would call Mafia Kind Bud. It's Kind Bud that's being imported through British Columbia by one of the families. I don't know who's doing it, but he's connected. At the time, I didn't know he was a Lucchese, and I did not know until I saw his passport. He never even told me he was a Lucchese. Hung out with him for about 1.5 years, rolled with him. We went together different places, and of course, I was picking up product from him. He ended up having to go on the run, though, because he ended up ripping off somebody in the family, and had basically a couple huge goons looking for him, and came over to this apartment complex one day and ended up stabbing him up in the alley.
They did get him then.
Yeah, well, he ended up stabbing these guys with the,
oh wow.
We call it Ginsu Alley. It was at my friend's house, and again, we're just a bunch of chill ravers, but my friend's got the Ginsu knife, and that's the only thing he's got, and he goes out in the alley to face these dudes, and he ends up walking away and coming to hide out in this little area where we live, this little town called Cottonwood. So yeah, Bill used to be connected with some guys that would get blow, and they come in and they break it down and distribute it, and Bill would recook it for him. And the reason I knew all that is because I was basically trading that to one of my Kind Bud connections, because he had a fondness for that. And although it wasn't my thing, I could trade that for, I could trade, let's say, $600 worth of that for $1,200 worth of Kind Bud, so I could.
Does that happen often? Like people trading off on certain things that they like? Oh, and I bet before you answer that, that Ginsu Alley type of thing and that name, too bad they couldn't make a commercial like that, right? The
Oh, the
Ginsu.
Ginsu. Yeah, the
It not
Ginsu.
only cuts it not only cuts meat, but in case you're in trouble.
Yeah, grab the Ginsu. No joke. Yeah, yeah. Forever, we'll kind of remember that as an anecdotal story.
There you
But
go.
yeah, when you talk about drug distribution and you talk about who's bringing it in, it certainly isn't the inner city folks that are bringing the coke in. These were
Mhm.
military guys that used to bring it in. They bring in
Okay.
multiple keys. He'd cook it down, break it down, and cut it for them, repackage it into bricks, and he'd keep his. Um, so yeah, he was a Lucchese, probably the great grandson of Tommy Lucchese or something like that. An exile, got on drugs. They sent him out here, and then ended up messing up on a 20 pack or so, and going on the run, and then ended up in prison. So
Well, that makes a lot of sense, especially since you didn't know who he was right away. He probably wanted to keep that quiet, for a while. You know what I'm saying? Especially being out there. Because don't forget, too, any guy that's in the mafia, whichever shape, way, or form, they get hooked on drugs. It's kind of, well, first of all, they always lie and they say they don't do anything with drugs,
mhm.
but they do. They always kind of reach out to people like yourself, and they help with connections, they help with maybe transporting, and they help with all those kind of things, but they
Mhm.
keep it quiet. And so he's, and plus it's an embarrassment. So like you said, he's got sent out there to probably get cleaned up. But I don't want to cut your story off because this is very
No,
interesting. I like it.
no, and what you're saying, yeah, I mean, these are all things that I just deduced from being around him and the situation and
Mhm.
the connection, because you can tell where things are coming from. If it
Right.
was commercial product, it was coming from the Mexican mafia at the time, or you'd have to get it from certain places. So, and then just seeing his passport, he was getting a Western Union transaction. And I just happened to glance
Mhm.
over and see the Lucchese name, and of course, I've always been interested in the lore. You know what I mean?
Right.
The lores and legends, and so that immediately piqued my interest, and realizing the connections, and then him being on the run up here. Actually, funny story. He was on the run at this little motel up here called the Little Daisy Motel, and the reason it's anecdotally funny is because if you've ever seen a movie called Midnight Express, Robert De
Yes.
Niro, Robert De Niro in a little town, he's got the accountant for the mafia, and he's on the run, and
Okay.
they're staying in this little hotel. So it's
And
just
that's
kind of anecdotal. Also, my dad drove the cop car in the movie. If you ever watch one of the extras in the cop car in the movie, my dad's in that. So
Oh, I'm gonna look out for that.
yeah, no, it's just funny, super funny anecdotes. So
Yeah.
yeah, moving forward, that's kind of like pre-2001 lifestyle. That's me living dangerously, hanging out with wild people, getting into crazy shit. Um, this is where I get a little more conservative. So I like buying the product. I like buying cannabis, like pounds.
Hmm.
But just at this time, this is where Kind Bud and Chronic and what you see in all the dispensaries right now um, is coming onto the scene. The late 90s,
Oh, okay.
2001. So I did get the great idea. We're going to grow it. So I'm going to figure out a way to cultivate it myself. I'm going to do all the research. I'm going to order seeds from Amsterdam through a nefarious, illegal third-party seed distributor who would
Smart.
later get arrested and have to do 5 years here. They extradited him for millions of dollars in seed distribution that he did out of Canada.
Wow.
His name was Mark Emery. Amazing guy. Hats off to Mark for all that he did for the industry. A lot of people have paid the price for people like myself to be here today and to go into the legal industry.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm glad you
so
didn't forget them.
no, yeah, and there's still a lot of people that are paying the price that haven't even got out of jail. We'd like to see those people go free for cannabis. I mean,
Mhm.
completely harmless crimes.
Yes.
Um, so I decided to start getting in cultivation to get the seeds and order the seeds. And here's where it kind of goes off the rails a little bit. I ordered the seeds in August. They're supposed to be sent the next month. Well, this is August of 2001.
Hmm.
If you could remember what happened in September of 2001,
Oh, with the
9/11.
yes,
Yeah, so we
yes.
didn't get our seeds for like 6 months because they completely shut the mail down. The international mail was stopped without a doubt. So it took us almost 6 months to get those seeds. Put us on a huge delay. We had to go swag. Anyways, it wasn't a fun situation. But we got the
Mhm.
seeds. I learned how to grow and started growing top quality product. And I don't mean
Nice.
top quality. I mean the best product that you could find from the best seed stock that you could locate on the planet. Um,
Wow.
Yeah, all F1 hybrids from a strain called Blueberry at the time, which is kind of the foundation of a lot of strains. But anyways, it was predominantly being grown for patients with cancer and serious developmental challenges, end of life causes, like real serious AIDS, HIV people, strong enough that you could either take a Percocet or you could take something like this.
Wow, that's strong.
Oh yeah, it's so strong that I know an Olympic skier that had her back broken at the bottom of the hill, waiting at the bottom of the hill for a coach, and a skier hit her that was on her skis for the first time. She ended up breaking her back, and she was supposed to have a morphine tank installed into her back. Basically, it's like a time release little morphine tank, and it just time release gives you morphine. She, instead of doing that, used kind bud, and I don't mean kind. I'm talking the high quality 20+ percentile kind bud that was being grown at the time.
Wow.
So I started growing that, but again, money. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make money. Yeah. So at the time, regular swag pounds are going for $5.50 a kind bud pound. And if you could find 1 pound of kind bud in one area, it was about $4,800. So you can grow 4 or 5 of those in a month. You could flip a room. You could do that every other month. It starts to become incredibly lucrative. And
but you pay for what you get. You pay for what you pay for the good quality. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And being on the scene at the time, this is still new. So, it's going for $20 a gram at the time. So, a pound, 64 quarters, you can probably pull 8,000-10,000 off of a pound, and so this is what's being sent back east, stuff like that. You'd start to see that. So yeah, cultivation instead of dealing is where I got into really learning about the plant, studying it, and studying everything I could basically find to learn about the plant. But I have to say that the plant taught me some really great things about myself as well.
Oh, it did? Like how? Because that's pretty much like you're an innovator, realistically, if you think about it, the way you went from just selling it. And but that's the truth though. But how did it show you things about yourself? I'm curious.
Well, when you learn to take care of something and you learn to nurture something, this might sound kind of funny to your audience, but it's like if you have a kid or a child, you learn to nurture that. You want it to grow to its best potential. When you put in your energy, and this is what I've learned, you get what you put into something.
Absolutely.
I knew people that, would have huge grows, and they would try to essentially what I call pimp the plant. This is like a Mafia kind of grow. They're just commercial level, running it as hard as they can, trying to get the max amount of profit, doing anything they could with pesticides or chemicals to optimize. Whereas we're looking at the benefits of the plant for the people that are going to be smoking it, obviously trying to create something that's so high quality people cannot, they can't deny it, and trying to change the game a little bit. So, you look at the plant, and the plant taught me something simple. I'll just leave it at this about your pH. So humans' pH is supposed to be about 7.3 to 7.5, and that's a healthy pH of a human. If you don't have a healthy pH, your body turns acidic. And in an acidic environment, you start to create certain things like cell proliferation issues, which is really what we call cancer and tumors and cysts and things like that, because bodies can't survive in an acidic form. And so we're really alkaline creatures, meaning our pH levels are supposed to be at an alkaline level.
That's right.
And so, so when you look at that, it's like, remember back in the day, I was talking about this to a guy on one of the construction sites I was working on, because I was working part-time and growing. I always had a job and I always hustled. And I'm like, man, well, I'm thinking about pH and wonder what's up with my pH. And, it's in the 90s, goes like a pH balance. What's up with that? Like some kind of feminine thing, but
I get it.
The plant physiology is a microcosm of human physiology. And if you start to look at them in the same ways, you can really start to learn a lot of things about yourself, and just some of those. Go ahead.
They said that we get white hair because our body starts producing peroxide.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that is something that I had never heard of, but I guess, going into an more acidic environment, Yeah.
Wow. So I like that, because that makes a lot of sense when you cultivate something. And like you said, you're raising a child. Why wouldn't you want to put everything you could? It's almost like, I'm going to give you an Italian, an Italian analogy. So if we're making pizza, don't laugh. So
I make homemade pizza all the time, the dough and everything. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you got the right dough, the ingredients, if you got the right sauce, you got the pizza sauce the right way, you get the best cheese, you got a great pizza. And it makes sense because now you're getting X amount of dollars for the pizza, because everybody's like, I want to go there. The pizza's the best. Why wouldn't you want to do that with weed?
Yeah,
You know?
anybody can make pizza, and that's a real great analogy for business.
Thanks. Yeah.
Anybody can make pizza, but
Hmm.
it's how well do you make it? Because there's
That's right.
no patent on pizza out there. But it's if you start with the right 00 flour or organic flour that's been milled the correct way, that's fine enough to create the air
That's right.
pockets that you need. If you
That's
work on
right.
your yeast, if you get the San Marzano tomatoes, if you get a great buffalo
Yes.
mozzarella, you get the
Exactly.
hand-grown basil from your garden. I'm a chef for many years,
Oh,
along
so
with
you know what I'm
get
talking about. Yeah.
with you 100%. It's a
Well,
huge.
you see, not only that though, too, and I always
Mhm.
sometimes I cut you off. I don't mean to.
No,
Okay,
please, Liz. We're just flowing. We're flowing. This is great.
okay. It's almost like this. You always want to do business with somebody like yourself. I would have loved to have been in business with you in some way, shape, or form. I could see why so many other people will gravitate to that because, and I'm going to tell you another stupid analogy. Every car that I ever bought and I sold it. Do you know how many people told me this is the best car? I had a guy come from Florida to New York. He flew in to buy my Mercedes. It was an older one, 1997 four-door S500.
Nice.
Yeah, hooked it up, took care of it, all of that kind of stuff. He flies in with his wife. He was older than me at the time. At that time, I was maybe in my 40s. I think he was in his 60s. He drives the car back to Florida. About 2 weeks later, the guy that helped me sell the car to him says, the guy from Florida called. And I'm like, oh, what's the problem? You know what I mean? Right away, you think something's wrong. The guy called him just to tell him, I want to let you know something. This is the best car I've ever owned. And you know how good you felt? Like, I'm sure you took pride the way you are talking to me. You take pride in what you're doing. I don't care what it is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I
it
don't
sounds
mean to
like
cut you
you
off.
took
So
no,
finish your
no, no,
story.
no, I like that. No, I
Yeah.
like that. You took good
Thanks.
care of the car. You took, and the
Yep.
guy's like, you didn't send him a problem,
No,
and that, it reflects poorly on your name, whether or not that
that's
person's
right.
going to come back and they live in Florida or whatever, on a kind of a universal level. And because I'm more of a humanist person, on a universal level, you know what you did, and
Hmm.
that's really, if not you, but if somebody gives somebody a crappy vehicle or passes on a problem, basically we'll just call it passing on a problem.
Yep.
You so I think the one core thing that you're talking about here, and that has really been like the biggest theme for me, is value. If you can offer and create real value for somebody, that's how you're really winning. You're giving. You're not just like,
Hmm.
hey, I want this. Any business transaction is an extrapolation of the value that you can convert out of that. So
Right.
being able to offer value, that's like you talk about being an earner. I've watched some of your shows, and like, I think one of the questions was what makes an earner? Being able
Right.
to bring value and
That's right.
spot value, because I could assume a lot of times, and some of the similar themes is you don't have any money really, you don't have means. Well, let's say we don't come from means. I did not come from means. I came from one pair of shoes a year, and those shoes were falling apart at the end of the year. I came from, you get clothes for your birthday. You know what I mean? Because you either get a birthday present or clothes because school
Right.
starts on your birthday. You know,
Right.
uh,
But you
so
came from good bones, though. You
I
had good
did.
parents.
I had two parents that were together, and I can't say
Hmm.
that about most kids on my block. Even though my dad was a
Hmm.
little wild as a biker, my parents drank a little bit. They was the best childhood that I could have ever had, and idyllic.
I believe you. Yeah.
But yeah, as far as an earner, being able to bring value and being able to, create something out of nothing. Because again,
Hmm.
like yourself and myself, it sounds like the common theme was you didn't have a lot of means, and so you have to, you got to go out and get two sticks and rub them together, or find a way to parlay some value, or do some arbitrage. Where you find something of value and you try to
Yes.
um, parlay that into something, or you can create value because you see an opportunity that somebody doesn't see. Like, let's say,
Right.
Michael Franzese with the gas scam. He was working with a guy that had a potential to make money, but as he saw the full opportunity and range of value that could be
You
created.
cultivated it.
Yeah,
Yes.
cultivate. Yeah, and the word you're saying, cultivated, and I love that. The second time you said that, it's
Thank
a
you.
huge. It's a huge part of anything.
Yep.
Sowing the seeds. You reap what you sow.
That's it. Now, did you get did you have to go away at all any time, and
Ah,
did you have to do time or
no. So
good?
my life has been a series of what I would call fortunate events. Other than when I was 5 years old, I got bit by a dog, had my face ripped open by
I
a
was
pit
going to
bull.
ask you that. Yeah,
I don't know if you can see it, but so
I can see it.
so being young, 5 years old, with a big, a tiny kid,
Hmm.
abnormally small, with a big ass scar on your face, doesn't
But
get
it
you
gives you
invited to a lot.
character, though. It gives
Well,
you
yeah,
character.
it does now. It does now. But, you can look at it now and be like, hey, he looks all right with it. What happened? But back when you're a kid, nobody wants to hang out with you, or they look at you funny, or,
I
kind of
know.
like Rudolph, they didn't let him
I
play
know.
any reindeer games, Uh,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
so I did take
Oh
a
yeah, no,
pinch,
go ahead,
but
please.
this is,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
go
this
right
is a
ahead.
good story. Because again, 15 plus maybe, years in the nefarious industry, chances are something's going to happen eventually. But my life has been what I would call, again, a series of fortunate events. After having the scar as a kid, I didn't let that build up on me. I wasn't, I didn't take that, all the stuff that people kind of did to me, or, growing up being called Scarface, I didn't take
Yeah,
that and build that up as armor. I just realized that if somebody else ever had a need, or somebody that was being like bullied or whatever like that, I got a soft spot in my heart for the downtrodden. You know what I mean? The people that are left out a little bit, and
agreed.
that's been something that and again, as a self-made person, I can appreciate self-made men, the themes of self-made men, trying to
Mhm.
control your own destiny. But with that being said, so we'll fast forward to, I've been growing kind bud for many years now, since 2001. I started my first operation. I would have multiple operations and house operations where I would go in and work with people. You had a house, I come in and I bring in the equipment, I bring in the strains, I show you how to
Wow.
cultivate it and manage it, and then I get a piece. I come and help you trim it, and then I move the product.
Oh,
Um,
that's good.
so so I did that for a period of years, and I was working because I always knew that if I ever had to go in front of a judge and had to
Yeah.
explain what I was doing, I would say, look, I'm trying my best. I literally already had kind of the, because you got to know what you're doing. You know the
Mhm.
consequences of what you're doing. Know it's going to be
Right.
10 years potentially if you get caught cultivating in Arizona,
Mhm.
but know all the way down to what you're going to say to the judge, and I did. So I knew that I could say to him, I've been working, I've been trying my hardest. Maybe I didn't do it the right way, but I'm trying here. I'm not living in a trailer off of welfare, growing weed and selling meth. I'm trying to
Right.
raise my level here. Albeit the wrong way, Fortunately, I would
They
never have
respect that.
honesty. You can respect whether it's,
Yes,
in the wrong place or not, but or coming
that's right.
from not the right place. So let's see, I've been growing for many years, and then we get to about 2009. I'm with my current wife at the time, and she comes in and tells me I'm pregnant. Now, at the time, I had let go of one of my last houses. I was working as a chef. I had really left that lifestyle. It was probably
Mm.
like 2 years, but because, I'm with my wife, I'm
Mhm.
trying, well, my girlfriend at the time who I was going to marry, and I'm, trying to kind of straighten, get on the straight and narrow. I'm doing
I
design
get it.
and video, 3D motion graphics, all sorts of stuff, so now I can make pretty good money from doing those things, and I don't need to do this. And I'm making already pretty decent money, but I'm not killing it. And no, I'm having a kid coming. So the lights of fire into my ass to say, hey, why don't you reach out to one of your old guys? So I reach out to one of my old friends connects that essentially is from the Emerald Triangle. These guys grow 500 on essentially about 500 pounds to 1,000 pounds on each of their parcels.
Mm.
And, there's tons of these farmers up in the Emerald Triangle. I'm sure you've heard of it, and I end up connecting with this guy and start getting packs from him, because at this time I can't really cultivate, can't set up houses. So I start getting essentially a first time I have to go out there and pick up the packs. So I got to go out to California, I got to go out to LA, and I got to go
Mhm.
out and pick up these packs. So go out there and, pick up a 20 pack, which, freight on that is like, if you go and do something like that, freight on that's probably like 60K, wholesale, you're only looking at 30K if you pick it
Okay.
up, maybe
Okay.
36 if you get it here, if you get it delivered. But you're looking all day 60K, and that's just wholesale. You can get rid of it. I could go see 5 different people. I can drop them a few P's every week, and I can get rid of
Mhm.
that in 1 month, and I can make myself, or somebody could make, maybe not myself, but somebody can make some decent money off that.
Nice.
You picture, a G off every P, that you could pull, just by dropping it off to the right people. So again, small circles, probably similar to yourself. You want to deal with people you've known. You're not dealing with anybody that you don't know.
Right.
So fortunately, I kept a small circle, and everything was kosher.
Mhm.
basically we got like, our little 5 towns, tiny little area, it's got 5 different towns, and essentially supplying all of those different towns. So at this time, legal cannabis is not legal yet. We're 1 year out. It's been voted, and never come in. So it's still super illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm getting the packs. I'm going out there, coming back. And then finally I'm getting delivery and everything's going great. Well, I go to drop off at a friend's house, a friend of mine named Doughboy. And I go to drop off, and this is how I catch a cold. So never really caught a cold through my own endeavors, but eventually informants, something's going to happen, especially if you're supplying that much weight to those different towns frequently, and nobody else could really sell their weight because, again, they didn't have a high quality product. They were trying to get a premium for it, and I always want to give the best product at the most affordable price. That's just business. Value. And so I'm undercutting everybody because I've got the plug where they're already getting it from somebody that's bringing it and trying to redistribute it. So I basically give it to the people that sell it to the people that break it down. So anyways, I'm over there at his house and I drop off. I never do any hand to hand. So these are things I would never, ever do. It's things I learned from watching movies, watching documentaries, watching people get tripped up, watching people get hemmed up. You don't talk on the phone. If you're on the phone, I'm going to see you there. Where are you going to be? That's it. And we'll talk when I get there. That's it. There's no reason to say anything other than I will see you there. Where are we going to meet? Another thing is you don't want to do hand to hands. So like if you're dropping off weight, you drop it somewhere, but you don't physically deliver it to somebody. You don't give them the product and they do not give you the cash. Almost never will you find cash and product in the same place. That's conspiracy. So if you do that, so these are all things I'm trying to kind of limit, So dropping off a pack over there, he's not even home. I drop it off on his porch and I just put it in this like a little ice chest thing and drop it off. So there's really, you can see something's happened, but you don't know. So I'm always under the impression that somebody is watching, somebody's listening. And likely, if you're dealing with somebody, they could be potentially an undercover. And if you assume all those different things, you're going to be careful enough to where you're not going to get caught on tape saying something you shouldn't. You're not going to get caught in a place delivering something that you shouldn't. And even if they see you deliver it, they have to prove conspiracy. So because I'm sure you're familiar with conspiracy charges.
Well, that law is illegal. That's an illegal law, just so you know.
Oh, right. The conspiring. Yeah, that's
it really is illegal. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
It is. It's just that they allow it, but a lot of people don't realize how it's illegal. I can't tell you what you're thinking. I'm thinking, what the other guy's thinking. It's they put that law into effect so that this way, if they can't get you on the real charge, what you're doing, they get you on conspiracy. It's a made up. The whole thing. It's almost like going to Las Vegas or something like that. Everything's rigged against you. It's the same thing with the government.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, no, that's the way they stack charges, just like Vegas or just like at a car dealership. It's like everything, and then you're happy to walk out with X when they already just got you on this, But yeah, with that being said, so I leave Doughboy's house, and here's the thing: next door, there's an investigation being run. So we're in one house. If you go next door, across the street is the narcotics task force. The narcotics task force has a mobile home and they're watching the mobile home next to my friend's house. So they're running a case on this guy's house, who is a guy I went to school with as well. And he's a meth dealer. So here's where it gets funny. This guy that I went to school with, and I'll say his name, Sean Reese, the one-tooth bandit, this dude who was a rat, ended up going to the house next door. He ended up picking up some meth from there. Then he went next door to my dude's house and picked up a bag of weed. So he double dipped these dudes. He just basically got 2 different cases in one. Well, here's the thing. I don't know how or why, but my friend had mentioned to the neighbor who he was getting his weed from. And this is just, come on. You know what I mean? Like, who are you getting it from? Come on, But he had somehow mentioned it to the neighbor. Well, the neighbor had mentioned it to the guy that had picked it up from him. Was like, oh, who you getting it from? So long story short, now they see my truck leaving. They got my license plate. Now we got a 3-month investigation. So this is what I would find out later on. They from that point are running a 3-month investigation. They've got surveillance. They've got essentially a surveillance company that they handle. And this is important to the story because they use a third-party surveillance company to follow, because the cops don't have we don't have this huge police force here, and they don't have the budget to do that kind of stuff. Even the narcotics team, they use a third party. Well, so I don't see anything happening. Everything's fine. Everything seems to be kosher. My friend ends up getting popped. Doughboy. He gets popped leaving the bar. He's got a sack. They catch him with the weed. They go back to his house. They find the pound that I had just allegedly dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they catch him. Luckily, he doesn't roll. I get a call from somebody. I don't know who it is to this day. It just said, hey, Doughboy wanted to let you know that he just got pinched. And he wants to let you know that he's good, but you just need to know that. So I ended up getting the information. And so I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out. Well, I had just gotten a fresh load from California, and I don't ever keep weight in my house. Just, that would be something that I would never have done, because you never want to keep anything like that where you live, maybe a little bit if I was like moving some product or something, but I always use kind of a third party house for that. I'd have another place where I'd have it at. And even those people didn't know it was there. That's even the best thing you could do, because, just anybody watching, they can run a case on you and they can do surveillance on you and they can get a warrant for your house. But it's very difficult to get a warrant on some grandma's house that is straight, or some older person's house that is a citizen that doesn't do anything.
I like that.
It's almost impossible, so, and they don't even know it's there, maybe,
Yeah.
So long story short, I start to notice a couple things. We're at the house and we're walking out one day, and a car comes pulling up, and they're just straight taking pictures. Like, they're just documenting us. And they're not even trying to hide. I was like, what the hell? Like, they can, maybe the house is for sale because it's a rented home. Maybe they're going to sell the home. So I didn't really, it was so over the top that I just didn't think that it was them. Like, there's no way we're going to pull up and actually let you see with the camera, So, so long story short, I start noticing a couple of things, this and that, but I'm still good, and I'm still essentially moving my packs. Well, at that time, I probably got about 90 days from the time that I catch that cold, as I would say, catch a cold from somebody. So they're following me. They're watching everything that I'm doing. But here's the cool part. My dad always told me, if you're going to play the part, son, don't look the part. And so back in the day, I wanted to be cool, and I would dress cool, and I probably have the weed, and they pull me over, and I've been pulled over in search 7 times, and I look like the guy, and I'm sure they had every fucking right to do it. But I learned later on that if you put on a pair of glasses that make you look like Malcolm X's white cousin, and you put on a nice polo, and you walk around with a briefcase, and you only go to businesses, because maybe you're actually dealing with people at this time that own businesses. So you're, it's really hard to tell what you're doing. And even at the point that I would get busted, they weren't even sure it was me. They thought it was, but they weren't really sure. So
that was good advice.
Yeah, so it really was. And I didn't take that advice when I was younger, but I definitely did when I was older, and that also goes back to my friend Joel, the guy that was killed. He used to always wear a suit. He'd be moving packs up to Denver, and he'd be in a suit, tie. I remember one time he gave us $100 just to borrow my friend's Oakleys, because he didn't want to sell them at the time. So just to borrow them, because it was the icing on the cake to make him look like a professional business person, that, the extra, and so it's all about looks, as looks and perception.
Appearances. Yep. Society. That's right.
There you go. So with that being said, I'm sitting in my house one day and getting ready to go to work as a chef, and smoking a joint in my studio. Nice place at the time. Had my first son. My wife is pregnant with my second son, the day after my daughter's birthday. So that would have been January 29th, 2010. Okay. I hear a knock at the door. I'm bumping music in my studio. It's, I'm playing music in my studio. It's super loud, and my little dog's barking. So I walk out to the living room, open up the door, and there are 5 Prescott area. We call them PANT, but it's Prescott Area Narcotics Task Force. It's this narcotics task force from this area. They're standing on my doorstep. Dude's got the battering ram. Sheriff's all over him. They're ready to come in. They got their guns, freaking M16s. Sheriff's department, open up. Fucking, I look at him like, shut the door. This is the craziest thing. I shut the door and locked it. I was like, what the fuck? Hey, Sheriff's department, gonna bust it down if you don't open it up. And I just like, unlock the door. Boom. They come in, push me back, grab me, handcuff me, get me down on the couch. And then it's like 4 or 5 of them. They're all searching the house, going through. And this is where, if you don't say anything, and there's another thing my dad always told me, keep your mouth shut, son.
That's right.
If you don't say anything, you're putting yourself in a much better position. So
Absolutely.
they come in and they think they're going to hit me with a 20 pack or 18 pounds or whatever. They think they're going to hit me loaded, of which
Right.
they didn't have any intel on that, but they could have. Well, fortunately, again, don't keep weight where I'm at, but I do have personal. So they run through the house. They're trying to find everything. They don't find anything but a bunch of joints, like they call them burnt marijuana joints is what they tried to charge me with, but it was leftover roaches. But the one thing they did find was almost an ounce of hash. So at the time, so at the time I had been getting a significant amount of hash as well. And I just introduced that into basically like my distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was still new. And I was only dealing with one person that would take it because it was still so new. I couldn't really move it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what clued me in, because the officer, boom, sits me down and he's like, all right, they can't find the weight. And he's like, where's it at? And I'm like, I don't got nothing. I don't got, and they find the hash and he's like, oh, what's up with this? He's like, we just want to know where all the hash is at. And I was like, oh, there you go. So I knew immediately who it was.
You connect the dots easy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I just played dumb. Like, look, man, and this is the fortunate part of my life. 2010-11 is when legal cannabis had just been voted in. So it was voted in November of that year. It's January of the following year. Now the legislation has been voted in, but there's no dispensaries. There's no way to get it. But technically, cannabis is legal, right?
Mm.
It's legal to consume. It's legal to have. So I just tell him, I said, look, Judge, I don't know if you ever seen the 25th Hour.
No.
Anyways, so I just said, look, and I kind of look at him as if he's a judge. I said, look, Judge, I've got shingles. And I've got this serious chronic illness, in which I've had shingles, and I had shingles since 2004, which is a serious issue. If you're
it's painful too.
Yeah, they give you Percocet for it. You know what I mean? So I use cannabis for that. So I say, look, I've got this serious this disability, and this is what I use. And I know it's legal. I know it's just been voted in, and I know that it's not quite for sale to dispensaries, but this is what I use for my medicine. So I'm just kind of explaining to him what I'm going to tell the judge. And I'm telling him as if he's the judge, and he could tell at this point he's the head of the narcotics task force, which I hope to interview him one day.
Okay.
I think this would be a really great interview. He's like, okay, so what can you tell me? And I'm like, I don't know. What can I tell you? There's nothing I can tell you. And he's like, well, what can we do about this? Look, I can, you want to go to work, I can let you off. And I'm just like, look, I'm not going to ruin anybody else's life for my own situation. This is something I did, and that's what I'm willing to pay the price for. So if you want to take me for this, then go ahead. Well, here's the thing. He had expected to find probably 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And here's something that I didn't know. They didn't have a warrant. Here's something I didn't know. This is something I didn't know till much later. They thought they were going to come and catch me with my pants down, just like everybody else in Conway, in this little town that doesn't think fucking what is going to happen. It's called chess. Not checkers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So anyways,
that's an illegal search and seizure then.
Well, here's the thing. So he comes in and boom, they sit me down and all that. And then I'm not even thinking about it at the time. I'm not thinking, he just said search warrant, we're coming in, right? They never showed me a warrant. So here he sit me down and he's like, look, so I can tell kind of by the end of this that he's losing steam. He thought he was going to come in and get this big bus, and he's got me for a couple burnt marijuana joints, but he's got me for the hash, of which he at this time is claiming he's a narcotic. Because in our funny little town, because of meth, they ended up making a law saying that if you have more than 9 grams of any narcotic, you got to do a 2.5-year minimum sentence. There's nothing we can do for you. It's a mandatory minimum of 2 years. There's no way around it, right? So he's looking at the hash. He's saying, well, there's probably about 28 here. We got it weighed out. So it looks like you've got way more than the legal limit for narcotics, because we're calling this a narcotic. And if you've got that, you've got over 9 grams, you're looking at 2.5 years, and there's nothing I could do for you. You may be looking at 4. And I'm just like, well, what are we going to do? This is me, So he's like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you go. And I'm like, what? It's like, how about I let you go to work? I'm like, let me go to work? It's like, yeah, I'll let you go to work, and you call me tomorrow, and you let me know if you want to cooperate. I've got 18 pounds in some place that I don't know if they're going to raid soon. They actually mentioned following me earlier and said they saw me coming out of said place, potentially said area. And so I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know I can get a free pass to go to work. So I'm like, you're going to let me go to work, and you're going to let me call you tomorrow and tell you if I want to cooperate. So I'm sitting there and I'm not sure. They're getting ready to let me go. He's like, I'm going to let you go. So I shake his hand. And again, I'm a man of my word. So I got in my outfit, which was all black, a chef's outfit. And I drove up to a town called Jerome, which is north of where we live. And I made sure I wasn't being followed because it's like a 2-lane highway and you can pretty much tell. Made my way up there, and I dipped in off the road into my friend's house who I'd been fronting. So I had a friend that lived up near my work that I had been fronting pounds to. Excuse me. I show up to his house and I'm like, Nick, I just got busted. And he looks at me like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing here? Like, you just got busted. What are you doing here? You know? And I'm like, I need your help. You know, I've got to call my friend and I've got to get this figured out because I've got to get rid of this weight. So he was really cool. And to this day, I just saw him recently, but I really appreciate good people. And he let me work out of his house so I could give my guy in California a call, the guy that would distribute all the weight to me. And he put me in touch with a guy that was living in our town to come and bring me another car. So basically the guy came and brought me a clean car. He came pick me up and then we went to get a clean car that I could drive. So basically a car in a square's name, all legit. That's not anywhere attached to me. So I could go with him to get the weight. So the guy shows up and he's got a drug dog with him. This is crazy. The guy actually trains canine dogs. And he's like, if we get into any issues, I could tell him I've got a canine right here. You know,
that's cool.
Yeah, because he trains the canine dogs for the police department. This is something they didn't even know. This dude's on the back end. So anyways, crazy. So anyways, he picks me up in the car. I end up leaving that night, coming down and meeting him. And I have to get to the weight. Well, here's the thing. I've got to get to the weight. And it's in this like back, it's kind of like in a back shop area that's on the backside of this gulch. And I don't have to go in through the front of the house. I don't even have to let the person know that I'm there. I can just go and pick up the weight and then dip back down into this like big long gulch area. And so I go there that night. I called my brother up and I'm like, bro, I need your help. And I'm so thankful for him. I really want to give a shout out to my brother for helping me out. And he came and met me that night and we were able to get all the weight. And I'm leaving that night, get down in the ditch, and the guy had dropped me off and into another car. And so I'm supposed to meet him. I park my car and I run down the ditch, pick up the weight. Well, I've got to run all the way back down this long ditch. It was just about like a half a mile to get to the main road where he's supposed to meet me in about 15 minutes. Cause we got it kind of coordinated where he drops me, I drop the car, and then I end up having to meet him. Well, I'm running up and I've got this, basically 18 pounds on my back and I'm running. And man, you never sweat. It's only 18 pounds, but you never sweat like when you're running with, 4 or 5 years on your back. You know what I'm saying? Just, in the middle of the night. And I'm huffing down this area and I get there and it's like it's a big gully, right? And so there's a little bridge that goes over the top of it. And so I see the lights coming. I'm like, oh, it's my dude, right? So I go and I step up and I get right as I get to the bridge. I look up and it's a sheriff. Fucking sheriff is coming across in like an SUV. Oh. Well, it turns out, and the only thing I could assume is I had parked my car, not mine, but the switch car. I had parked it off on the side of the road, kind of near somebody's house. Well, I think they might have called him and like, what's up with this car? Or he was just patrolling and saw it. Maybe he was just patrolling. So as I'm under, I see it. He comes, stops on the bridge. I could see the brake lights lighting up around the whole area and the gulch. And I'm under this bridge looking up.
Whoa.
Just like this. Holding on to the weight because it's like a big duffel bag that I have you hold like this, but it's on my back like this. And then boom, he slowly creeps away. He sees the car. So he gets distracted by the car. And I immediately toss the weight down, wait for him to go, jump up out of the gully in all black again because I'm in my chef's uniform.
Yeah.
I tail it down the road to the intersection and then run the half a mile back to the house where I could then go in the front door and be cool.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So I dropped the weight. The dude ended up getting the weight back. But the thing was, he had to wait. I was like, there's a sheriff there. Just wait, come back and get it. So that's basically the story of how I got rolled. Wow. Didn't decide to cooperate. Now, maybe if it was 20 or 30 years, you know what I mean? Maybe it was a long time. Maybe I would have considered it. But, at that point, I wasn't willing to really put my morals on the line or compromise anybody else's life for my own decisions. So ended up getting the weight back to him, walked away with my street credit, which was really good because I would end up being able to work with him much later on in the legal industry once things happened again. So I ended up calling. Now I'm a man of my word. I called him the next day.
Him.
Oh yeah, I called him the next day,
Yeah.
but not before calling an attorney, and not just any attorney, the former prosecuting attorney for 20 years on narcotics, and who is now a defense attorney. So this is the guy that, so I called him and got on the phone 8:30. I had money put away. I was good, got my attorney ready. And we got on the phone and I said, I'm a man of my word. I told you I'd contact you today. And this is my lawyer. My lawyer said, Ian Pedersen does not wish to cooperate with you. And that was it. So then they push it because, again, I'm still looking at potentially what he thinks is 2.5 years because he's got me on the narcotics beef. Essentially he's under the impression that he's got that. So I've got my lawyer and I'm just like, look, I don't think this is going to go anywhere past the plea bargain. I think we're going to plea bargain this down and it's going to go. Well, he says, hey, this is serious. You could potentially be looking at a couple of years. Are you sure you don't want to cooperate? And I remember just looking at the guy and just being like, ask me again and we're done, because this isn't a big enough deal for me to even consider talking about that, especially. So lo and behold, pay the guy. He ends up connecting with the narcotics officer, and the narcotics officer is saying, well, my sergeant is sure this is going to be 2.5 years and he could possibly get you 4 years because you've got so much. And we're going to go through with the charges. And I said, okay, we're going to go through with the charges. So like a pretty interesting situation is being able to self-surrender. I don't know if, a lot of like you, I think you said you just got busted right on the spot, dead to rights.
Yes.
Yeah. So they didn't have me dead to rights and I had to do a self-surrender. Well, self-surrender is a pretty darn privileged thing to do. I want to say,
Yes.
Because you're scheduling when you're going to come in and get arrested.
Yep.
You're scheduling to meet the officer. And so it was just about Valentine's Day at this time because, January 29th, they got busted. It had been a couple of weeks, get the attorney. They're getting ready to file the charges and I got to do my self-surrender. And we're trying to schedule the self-surrender. And the officer's like, I can't do it tomorrow because of Valentine's Day. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to wait. We'll go ahead and do it. It was like a Wednesday or something. We'll go ahead and do it on Thursday. So I end up going down to Phoenix and get myself a nice Ralph Lauren sweater. Cause again, perception is everything.
That's right.
I get my bail bondsman all set up, cause I know I'm going to get arrested on the spot. Right. I'm going to get processed that day and I'm going to get out. I'm not going to stay the night and none of that bullshit, excuse me. So get all prepared to do it. Next morning or the night before, I get a call from my lawyer. He said, you sure you want to go through with this? And I said, yeah. Let's do it. It's like, I'll see you down there at 6 a.m. So I had to get up butt crack of dawn, 6 a.m. And I got to go down to the county facility, which is basically county corrections and where they also have an on-site facility as well. It's like the county jail. So I got to go down there to get arrested. So I get all dressed up, do my last smoke, and I'm all right, let's get this done. And I'm waiting in the parking lot. Narcotics officer didn't show. Waiting in the parking lot, still didn't show. I'm like, what is going on? But call my lawyer. I'm like, Jeff, what's going on? He said, you didn't get my message? I said, no, I didn't get your message. He called my burner because, burner, regular phone.
Yeah. Right.
He called my burner. This is actually funny. I don't know why he called my burner because I never gave him a burner phone. That's also interesting. I would find out later on these guys work together. They work together. That's why he was like, you sure you don't want to cooperate?
Yeah, because I was going to say, asking you too many times.
Yeah. The third time, not just first, not just second at the restaurant, but when I was like, come on, but like third time, so anyways, I ended up asking him, I remember asking him, like, do you know this guy? Like, well, you know this guy? And he kind of stood back a little bit and I could tell, like, kind of triggered him a little bit. He said, well, we work together, it's like, yeah, I bet you do. You run tons of cases, it's like, let's make a deal or something with Monty Hall. So long story short, they want to push me to do it. I don't want to do it. So I show up. He don't show up and he calls me or I call him in the morning. I said, where are you at? And he's like, they're going to drop the charges. I was like, what do you mean? He said, they decided to drop the charges. They're going to file a civil summons in the mail. Expect that. Like I expected some sort of a civil summons. They got 1 year from the time you're arrested and or contacted on any crime. They've got 1 year to file charges basically, or else they got to drop the charges, So I ended up waiting that year and nothing ended up happening. By that end of that year, I was already launching one of the, essentially in our time or in our town, the largest grocery store in the area. And Excellent. At that time, it's just getting ready to go medical marijuana. So I ended up connecting with a dispensary that is just opening, that's just got the license, but they don't have a cultivation yet. So I'll tell you something interesting about the industry is the way they set it up is they said that you have to have an operating dispensary before you can have a cultivation. And with that, you must also have at least 1 gram on site to serve patients. These are kind of the rules that they wrote in.
Okay.
Well, the funny thing is they're putting the cart before the horse, because how can you have a dispensary if you don't have any legal product?
That's what I was asking. I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So they basically created the most illegal industry for the first year or two, because the only cannabis that was being sold in state licensed dispensaries was coming from California, because it wasn't being grown in mass amounts in Arizona. And I can literally spot it. You can see what was being grown outdoors, And so I was able to get local product and work with local caregivers, and then myself start cultivating again. And then I was able to basically work with this guy who had the dispensary licenses, who was a 40-year state legislator, professor at U of A that did the human genome experiment. If you've heard of that, it's an anthropology experiment that tracks all.
I've heard of that. Yes, that I've heard of.
So he authored that, and interestingly enough, getting calls from John Kerry at the time on his presidential run in Janet Reno. So full on Skull and Bones. Oh yeah, full on Skull and Bones. We could say, I won't say his name, but I'll say that for somebody that was given the anti-corruption award at Robert De Niro's Club Tribeca, New York restaurant, is quite the opposite. And all of these guys. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But big business, good business. So I ended up setting up. Go ahead.
You know that you get a lot of pushback from the pharmaceutical companies, because they run the whole show. You know that. I don't have to tell 100%. You. I know you know that. And so when they open up these, the fact that it's more healthier for you, because I do believe in the cannabis and all of that stuff. I don't, even though I don't smoke or anything no more like that, I still think it's we're in the right direction, as opposed to being healthier than what the pharmaceutical companies give you, because they always have side effects about this and that and all of that craziness.
It's not sustainable.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just not sustainable for your liver or your kidneys.
That's right.
They control the industry, like you're saying. You're exactly right on. It's a very intuitive statement, because they not only control the industry from a lobbying level for state laws, but they also, and this is something I would learn later on when they told me to come and get my $500,000 out of the bank, is because the cartels, that I'll call them, the pharmaceutical cartels, also have huge amounts of sway with the banks, because the banks hold all their money.
Well, that's exactly right. And the banks here in the country, even though like in Colorado, when they were making it illegal there, the banks still couldn't take all the money that they were doing. The weed was legal, but the banks, because under federal law, they wouldn't accept the money.
Yep. And even after no, go ahead.
That's right. My friend came up with a credit card so that he had his own bank, so that you could put money with his credit card companies and stuff like this. And you still was able to legally have your money, but you couldn't do it in a bank. So he came up with the credit card system. He made $42 million in 1 year.
Wow. Probably doing third party offshore processing, I'm sure.
However he did it, he's smart, so yes.
Yeah.
No,
that's great. No, that's really interesting. No, it likely did it with offshore processing, because for the first few years of the industry, and even when we went into CBD, so I transitioned from cannabis, which, high THC cannabis, started working with children with developmental disorders, and a little girl with missing part of her skull cap and brain, and who was having multiple seizures, to work on non-psychoactive benefits. But even with that, and the 2019 Farm Bill that came in, which was essentially the Farm Bill that allowed for cannabis cultivators to come in and do it legally on a federal level. What ended up happening was the banks still wouldn't take your money. So not just from cannabis, but from a federally legal hemp-derived product, that's basically what my business is in.
Yes.
I went from the illegal industry where you could make hundreds of thousands, but just like your friend, in the legal industry on a national level, and from own experience, you can make tens of millions of dollars.
That's right.
Yeah. And likely, getting back to your friend, he probably did it with the offshore, because everything that was being processed offshore. I ended up writing some articles in Cannabis and Tech Today about it, one of the publications that I'm an author for. But essentially what was happening is, I'm creating a legal product that's federally legal as far as the Farm Bill, and I walk into the bank one day and they say, "Hey, we need to close your account, and you need to get this $500,000 out of here." It's we don't want your money. And again, I think that the correlation is if they allow the banking industry to take our money, it gives us a foothold and it will give us momentum.
Yep.
And that is the momentum that the pharmaceutical industry that just doesn't want us to have. And so I believe that because they have hundreds of billions of dollars with some of these larger banking cartels that work together with these pharmaceutical cartels. I think cartels exist. Go ahead.
It was like the Tucker car back in the days, and once again, I don't mean to cut you off. It's like the
No,
Tucker
please.
car when Tucker came out. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but it was based on a true story, because Ford, Chevy, all of these places, they didn't want him to become, because he made a quality product, and now he was going to take away from them. And listen, you and I know, and you know, because the way you grew up and you seen all the stuff that you were involved in. Anybody takes any money from you, you're doomed. Somehow, some way, somebody's going to get in on it. You know what I mean? And look, some people, you said, like you said, with Sammy's son and over there, some people try to just take over. Some people do it the right way and say, listen, I'm in your town. I want a piece of this place. I can help. I can bring more people. I can sell more product. I can whatever.
Add value.
And add value. And some people just think they're going to muscle their way in, and then there's a war. So, people get killed. So it all depends on how you do it. But this is the stronghold, like, because if you can't show money where you're making something, it makes it a lot harder. You can't be making millions of dollars, or and then you can't show it, and then you're living in $1 million home. They're gonna be like, "What's going on here?" You know what I mean?
No, exactly.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to cut you off. So that's what you're doing basically now. That you're doing all the legal stuff now.
Yeah. So up until about 2000 and. So it launched the largest state licensed cultivation in Arizona at over 10,000 square feet, launched state licensed dispensary, ended up really heavily involved in psychoactive, ended up getting into the Las Vegas markets, consulting, etc. And then we ended up meeting a little girl that was having 12 to 14 seizures a day. That was a friend. It was the daughter of a friend of my wife's. And she said, we got to help this girl. And for me, I've been in psychoactive, and I've been really a researcher in cannabis at that point for 16, 17 years, really doing the research on it, trying to find out how it can help people, and working on it, working with people with seizures, working with people. I had a friend that had an operable brain tumor who would have seizures, and learning about high CBD strains. And so essentially started working with high CBD strains, and you've heard of CBD, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Most people have. So we were basically one of the first to the national market with CBD, but not only that, but like something that would actually help people. So hundreds of thousands of children we've worked with. I've probably done over 50 or 60 speaking gigs, working with physicians, pharmacists, DOs, MDs, NMDs. We had an opportunity to work with on a request for information with the NFL. So we were able to submit some research to the NFL on CTE and TBIs, which is traumatic brain injuries, and specifically for pain management, of which the NFL is just on the backs of those studies, and a few other contributors has just funded a $1 million study on CBD for the benefits of it. So I've been working in the industry for a long time and really trying to, again, add value, really actually help people. And that's why our company Source CBD has grown nationally and even into some of our international accounts, and has been relevant. We just celebrated 10 years. So I think that's one of the reasons we've been relevant today after starting in 2014, working with this little girl.
Wow. Now, what happened with the little girl? You cured her? You helped her a lot with all that, with her symptoms, with the seizures?
Yeah. So it was a little girl born with something called anencephaly. And essentially, it's where a little girl's child is born without their skull cap. So it's a completely open skull, and their brain is exposed. And the life expectancy is typically 30 minutes to 30 days. But this child, her name is actually the miracle of baby Kirsten. She had a skull cap sewn and grafted onto her head over a period of about 1.5 years at Phoenix Children's Hospital. And during that time, medical marijuana had just come out, and the stories about it helping seizures. And I started working with this mother, and it took us about 3 months to find something that would work for her. But I can remember distinctly the day that mother walked into me and told me that her daughter Kirsten had no seizures that day. And after having 12 to 14 a day, I sat down. It was a complete, it really sat me down, because I had been involved in psychoactive cannabis and the recreational side. And I sat down and wanted to squirt a tear, because I knew that we could do something special. And at that point, we didn't have a company. I wasn't trying to start a CBD company. I just saw that we had something real special and
life-changing.
Yeah.
Life
And
changing.
yeah, for other people. And because of that, they shared their stories, and it went from regional to national, and then moving on to work with pets. And, and like I said, in being featured in High Times Magazine, Dope Magazine, Forbes Magazine, just as of this last year, for our work as in the industry. So just super grateful and humbled to be able to actually be relevant, I think, in the industry, and do something on that level. And, coming from the complete other side of the fence, and I'll actually tell you, I saw the narcotics officer sometime after my arrest, and I remember seeing him. And at that time, it was probably 7 or 8 months, and it had become legal. I remember seeing him and just saying, "Hey, no hard feelings." We shook hands, and I just said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm turning over a new leaf into legal
Nice.
cannabis." It was kind of a little pun.
Yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah. And, shook my hand, and I think I'd like to speak to him one day and find out a little bit more. But, back to the warrant thing. They never left me with a warrant. I did some research on it. From what I understand, they have to leave you with a physical copy of the warrant that shows the areas that they're going to and willing to
That's right.
search. And so when I remember distinctly saying, leave me with something, he didn't leave me with anything but a false charge sheet, basically like an open pink sheet,
Nah.
So, I'd like to get the discovery on that. I think I can do. Matt Cox had told me, or talked to me about doing a freedom of information request and doing that request. Yeah. And then I hopefully will be able to see if there was actually a valid warrant issued or not. And I think at this point, it's been 15 years, since any of those nefarious illegal activities. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of look back on that, sit down with the narcotics officer, like you did with that police officer that owned the bar.
They break the law. They break the law all the time, Ian. Just so you know, they break the law all the time, but nobody knows the law. That's just the secret of the police departments, government places. They break the law all the time, and all they do is either switch the wording around a little bit, or they get a judge that favors them all the time. I was lucky in my case that I won my illegal search and seizure. I'm actually in the law books for the Fourth Amendment.
Really? Okay.
Yep. Yep, you look me up, Joe Barone and Jose Muniz for the Fourth Amendment. You'll check it out. But your journey seems to me that how do you really know that the way all the stuff that you went through, it just led you up to here. Maybe this was your true calling, but you don't have no way of knowing that until you get there. Listen, everybody gets put in a certain path for whatever reason. We don't know. I don't know if this is the end of my journey or not, but it looks like what you've created and what you've done is, I commend you, and I think it's
Thank you, John.
fantastic. Oh no, my pleasure. It was just an honor just to have somebody like yourself. What a beautiful story you got. I really enjoyed this, to be honest with you. I'm telling you, and I'm not just blowing smoke up. I don't know you, I just met you, but when I
Thanks,
hear
Joe.
these kind of stories, it hits home. Hits right. It hits right to the heart.
Yeah. Well, we all have a journey. We all have a past.
Yep.
But we all have a future, and like yourself, even, I remember talking to Matt about this when we were driving, heading to dinner. It's like, everybody has an arc in life, and,
That's true.
Realizing that, these are some, profound principles is, knowing yourself and realizing that all the world is a stage is it's a huge lesson to learn, because, everybody, I think, has the ability to be and can be whatever they want and the greatest version of themselves if they work on it. But through offering value, doing things like self-auditing, I think that was a huge part of my lifestyle, is, going through all the drug scene, going through all those crazy stories, making tens of millions of dollars in the industry, never getting strung out on drugs, never ripping anybody off, never rolling on anybody, never having to go to jail. I'm grateful for all these things.
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm grateful for, the way things have turned out. I think, in some cases, the road of excess can lead to the path of wisdom.
That's right.
But fortunately, I've been able to learn from a lot of other people's mistakes and a lot of the things that they have done to try to propel myself just to be able to do better. And then, while I was doing all this, not only having my third child, but then having, adopting 2 children at the time was a real pivotal time for me in my life. And so, to anybody out there that's, didn't graduate high school, didn't have the means to do or funding to do great things. You didn't get to go to college. You didn't get to go to trade school. Try to learn opportunity, and that there's opportunity out there, but that opportunity is going to come from within. You're going to have to find out what you have and what kind of skills you have that you can offer to society or to people that is going to help contribute some sort of value. And I think that's been like the biggest thread as we talk about value and, again, self-auditing. That's I guess I'm grateful to be in a position like this after all of these years and all these crazy things that have happened.
Oh, this was definitely a breath of fresh air. I'm so glad that you blessed us by coming on our show. Is there anything that you can, anything else you want my audience to know? Anything they can get in touch? Because I would love if you could keep in touch with us on the progress, what's going on in your life. If you do get to interview the sheriff, let us know. We want to, have that on our show. We want to play it for you. We want to see that. I think that's going to be a really good interview if you ever get that guy on the show, But
thanks, Joe.
I want you to. Oh no, thank you. I mean, keep us posted what's going on in your life, the progress you're making, and if there's anything we could do to help, we'll always put something on our show for you.
Amazing. Well, a few things going on currently. Thank you, Joe. So yeah, a few things going on currently, if you don't mind me mentioning.
No, I do.
We obviously have our company, sourcecbd.com, celebrating 10 years in non-psychoactive health and wellness. And I've got a book coming out, a very short book, but it has to do with life lessons, business lessons, and some lessons in the streets. It's called How I Got Over.
Okay.
And that'll be coming out here in the next few months. That's going through publishing right now. And I'd love to connect with you in the future, Joe, and maybe have you come on. I have a show on YouTube called Forward Momentum with Ian Pedersen. And basically, as it says, the title of the show, it's just about us all trying to gain that forward momentum forward and do some good things for ourselves. And like I said, you don't have to have all the means in the world to do it. You just have to be able to spot value and do a little self-auditing. Work smart. Overworking hard is a good thing. You can work hard, but also work smart. And I think those are some of the threads that have really, really put me in position in life,
Excellent. You're a good guy. I definitely want a copy of the book when it does come out. Let us know so we can show it on the air over here as well. I might even start doing some CB because I'm getting old now, and the joints are hurting and all of that stuff. So who knows what I might get into,
Well, I'll send you a pack of these gummies here. We got our new Source gummies out. They're amazing. I'll send you a pack out if you like them, brother.
I appreciate that.
Funny anecdote, if I may.
No, go ahead.
You were with the Bonanno family, yeah?
I was.
Okay. So I ended up working at a hotel in 2005, and I was a shuttle driver, one of my second or third jobs at the time, living in Phoenix. And walk in, and the bell guy says, "Hey, you're going to be driving Mr. Bonanno today." I was like, "Okay." So the name, obviously it's a unique name. And the Bonanno family, from what I understand, has had quite a history here in Arizona. So I end up coming in, and lo and behold, this guy Mike Bonanno shows up. I don't know if you know who Mike Bonanno is.
No, I know the founder was Joe Bonanno. Then he had a son too.
Right. So he'd be the grandson of Pepino.
Okay, that's why. Wow.
Yeah. And you could tell a spitting image. He looks just like his father. Or grandfather, but father as well. They both, Joe and John, they both have the same looks. But yeah, just overstated features, the glasses, and I drove Mike for about a week and a half. Now, what's interesting is as a shuttle driver, you'll typically be driving pilots, guests. You take them to the movies. As a shuttle driver, I can take you to the mall. I could take you within about 3 or 4 mile radius. I could take you to the mall. I could take you to the movies, take you to dinner, pick you up. And most everybody's doing that. Well, this was a little different. I pick up Mike and we go to a house and I drop him off. And then I pick him up. And then we take him to another house and I drop him off and I pick him up. Or I take him to a nice Italian restaurant, drop him off, and he comes out with a nice meal for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, super cool guy. But
yeah, the
funny thing is, I pretend like for as much as I respect self-made men and controlling your destiny and am fond of the lore of the Mafia, I know that no offense, but a lot of the guys in the industry can be users. You know what I'm saying? That it's like, what can I use you for? Right? Like,
Yep.
So at the time, I was doing my thing still, and he probably smelled the pot because I was smoking, in the shuttle before I pick him up. But he started dropping little hints, like, so tell me about your family and your background. Family's very important, little hints, and, guys like this look out for young bucks that they can cultivate,
Yes.
And I thought, and I thought about telling him, hey, I've got an operation going. Maybe we can work something out. But then, life is like a choose your own adventure. You make a certain decision or you don't, and who knows, maybe if I would have rolled on those dudes, maybe I wouldn't be here today. You know what I'm saying?
You never know.
You never know. But, working with that guy was something that I saw the opportunity. He was kind of putting it out there, but I just played dumb. Like I didn't know,
Good
so just a funny anecdote, but
no,
but yeah, even though, I've read A Man of Honor. I know, very familiar, but I think I know enough to know to stay away.
Because his grandfather moved out there after he left and walked away, and he wrote that book.
Yeah, see, that's the thing he said as well. He said my grandfather, we had a ranch up there, and most people don't know, but in Sedona, Arizona, in this area is actually Al Capone had a hideout in Rimrock, which is about 20 miles from here. This area. The Bonannos had a ranch up here at the base of Schnebley Hill, I believe it was, which is basically because they could see it's a one-way road coming in and out. And there's no way anybody could come in. And so he ended up moving to Tucson, and he actually lived next door or within proximity to Sean Atwood, who I would later connect with, who was one of the one of the guys from the HBO documentary I was telling you about earlier.
Yes.
But yeah, a man of respect, there you go.
But that book actually did a lot of bad too, because that's when Mayor Giuliani went out there and so it kind of blew up a lot of, exactly. So, sometimes it would have been better off if he did it and then put the book out till he died, but you know how it goes. I don't got to tell you,
No, and I'm talking right now myself, I thought I would tell the story for a long time, but 15 years later, all that, what are you going to do?
Thanks for that extra story too. I appreciate it, Ian. Listen,
appreciate connecting, man.
Like I said, thank you once again for coming on. God bless you. And listen, like I
God
said,
bless
keep
you
in
too,
touch.
Joe.
Thank you. Keep us in touch. You know what I mean? And we'll stay in touch. And like when the book comes out, like we said, and all of that, we'll do whatever we can to promote it.
Sounds good. I'm going to have to order myself one of those coffee cups as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks. All right. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Ian. You take care now.
Right on. You guys be well. Thank you, Joe.
And thanks again.
Thank you.